Hello and welcome to Positive Talk. On the program today, we are looking at different interventions that we need to put in place for us to ensure that we meet the 2030 agenda, mainly looking at ending AIDS. One of the interventions that has been identified is ensuring that gender norms are transformed in our communities. What exactly are we talking about when we are talking about transforming gender norms? We're going to be unpacking all that today on the program, and mainly we are going to be basing our deliberations from a regional symposium that's being hosted by SAFEIDZA in Harare, Zimbabwe, where we're having people coming from different countries coming together and sharing particularly best practices in terms of what has been implemented at community level and has worked. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the deliberations.
Back home in Malawi, women came out, spoke out on issues that affect them, while others was a genuine cause to address the issues. The entry into society was more confrontational. It was more confrontational because they saw a man being at the center of the problem and them being on the defensive side. That's why there was that confrontation. And this seemingly brought resentment in many Malawian men. The consistent gender awareness messages and gender interventions by women and women organizations and activists did play a big role in raising awareness of the various gender issues. However, the awareness and interventions did not translate into tangible change in the Malawian men, the targets for the messages and interventions. Most of them prejudiced with regard to gender issues and concerns.
Why is it us women's movements who now need to say we need to engage men, and then we go out and start inviting men to say come and be and partner with us on this? So there are some women's movements who really feel strong that this is not right. However, there is a recognition that we are not going to win gender equality if we don't work side by side with men. And it's about working side by side and not working together. And I hope people understand the difference there. If you look at the current movements that already exist, many of them seek to address gender-based violence because it is the low-hanging fruit. Very few of them are trying to address the fundamental changes that Mary yesterday you were talking about, changing the status quo. Really saying we want to change the way men think. We want to change the way men act. We want to do away with patriarchy.
I don't believe that men must speak on behalf of women. Women must speak as women. But men must complement, because men are not a homogeneous group. We have issues. Men are also victims of patriarchy. There are certain expectations when you get to a certain place and you don't flirt, and they look at you like, what kind of men are you? Are you not seeing us? We are around. There is an expectation, you know, it's not easy being a man. I've been a man all my life. I can only speak around that, but it's not easy. Patriarchy has put us in a very, very difficult place where if you don't measure up, then you become a sissy. And if you don't want to be a sissy, then you have to measure up. But when you want to measure up, then you are promoting patriarchy. So I think we need to sit down, men and women, men's movement and men's movement, and begin to say, how do we dislodge patriarchy?
You know, there's something that Mrs. Chingandu spoke about last year, the issue of the triple shifts. I think I'll just explain what that is. So she was saying, now that we've talked about 50-50 in the workspace, so you have a woman who's working the same workspace that the man is working, and now she comes home, she has to be superwoman and prove that, you know, I can still have my cake, you know, eat my cake and still have it, that type of thing. Now you go home, you're still superwoman, you're still expected to do other things. From there, you're still expected to support the husband, the wives, and all of that. And this is what we have slowly getting into without really looking at what's happening. I think what we should be doing with the conversations around gender equality is adopt the same strategy that we use for conversations around race. Check your privilege. I think it starts there. Telling the men to check their privilege. That's how you address the issues of the status quo. So when people say, for example, Black Lives Matter, and people come in and say all lives matter, it's like saying women's lives matter, and you have men saying, no, all lives matter. There's a reason why people are saying women's lives matter. It's because they are not undermining other lives.
Like I indicated, to unpack for us what exactly are we talking about when we're looking at issues of gender norms transformation. We have the executive director from SAFAIDS, Mrs. Lois Chingandu, who's the one responsible for this regional symposium. Mai Chingandu, we welcome you to Positive Talk.
Thank you.
Tikukumbira kuti mutitsanangurire imini nzwa mumadeliberations amuri kuita muri kutaura imimi kuti gender norms transformation. SAFAIDS muri kungoya nemanyu words here taimbobvai muchiti gender iye zvino makuti mukambotaura gender transformation mukachinja makuti gender norms transformation. Amupekerai Zimbabwe kuti tiri kumbotarisana nezvei uye zvesymposium iyi ndeyechizvi zvatakatarisana nazvo.
Kana taakutaura nyaya yemanorms, taakutaura socialization, zvatakakura tichinzi munhu wemukadzi anofanira kuita zvakati nezvakati, munhu wemusoro wemba ndibaba, saka murume anofanira kuita zvakati. Tiri kuona kuti zvinhu izvozvo, for example, vamwe vanobva kudzimba dzinonzi murume ndiye musoro wemba, saka murume chaanongo ataura ndiwo chinofanira kungoitwa, zvine zvataura mudzimai hazviteereri. Izvozvo ndo zvinhu zviri kuramba zvichitiita kuti titadze kuti tibudirire munyaya dzegenda. Nokuti kana tichitaura gender tiri kutaura kuenzana kwevarume nevakadzi. Hatisi kureva kuenzana pamuviri kana kuti kureba kana kuti kupfupika, tiri kureva fairness, equal opportunities, and equal rewards. At the moment, a lot of the benefits dziri kuvarume ende kumadzimai kuna mabenefits akawanda. Saka tiri kuti isusu ngatichinjei kubvira mwana paanozvarwa, makudziro atinomuita, mamessages atinokura tichimupa, kuti abva angokura achiziva kuti munhu wemudzimai akafananawo nemi, ane ropawo semi, anorwadziwawo semi, anofanirwa kurespektwa. Ndosaka ndokwatakudzokera ikoko kubva nevana vadiki vachiri kukura, kuti ngatikwirei nawo with the right language.
Varume muri kuona vari kuplaya role yei? Makuda kufamba nevanhurume here? Because pamwe tomunzwa kunzi gender inosanganisira varume nevakadzi. Vamwe vakangonzwa kuti gender zvakunzi havana Mai Chingandu kuti ndo vakutotonga mudzimba, ndo vakutonga everywhere. Senge mimi madirector emakambani makunzi modaita director wokumba zvakare, ndo zvinenge zvakufunga vakawanda.
Tiri kuti isusu varume nevakadzi ipartnership, asi tiri mupartnership imomo munofanira kuva nefairness. Saka tine varume vaakuti vaakunzwisisa izvozvo, vari kudawo kuuya vachitibatsira chinangwa chemadzimai kuti vabatsire kuchinja power difference iripo pavarume nevakadzi. Asi tinoti varume hongu tinovagamuchira, asi hatidi kuti vaende pamberi nokuti dzinyaya dzemadzimai. Nyangwe murume akati ndaakunzwisisa kurwadza kunoita mudzimai, haangambofa akazozvinzwa, haasi mukadzika, haangazombofa akazvinzwisisa. Saka tinoda kuti vavepo semubatsiri. Kana uri mubatsiri haungaendi pamberi. Muridzi wenyaya ndisu madzimai, tinoda kumhanya nenyaya dzedu, asi ivo vachitibatsirawo, nokuti vakatibatsira zvinoitawo kuti tikurumidze kusvika kwatoda kuenda.
Well, that's Mrs. Lois Chingandu there. Vati challenger. But issue yavo hongu hanzi basa richiripo rekuti tiite kuti tizosvika pekuti madzimai asvika pekuti vanofara. Tese tinoona kuti madzimai vaenzana in terms of mikana inoprovidwa in our communities, in the workplace, within the political space as well. It's for you and I to look at ourselves, self-reflect, ask ourselves, what am I doing to ensure that every person, every individual has the same access to all the resources that are available. Join us after the break. Welcome back. We continue with our program, and now as we start off this episode, I'm joined by one of the key speakers at the regional symposium. That's Mary Crew from CSANG, that's University of Pretoria. They're also here to share their own experiences, their initiatives as far as issues of gender norms transformation are concerned. Mary, welcome to Positive
Thank you
Talk.
very much.
Could you share with us what are the key issues that, from the point of view of your institution, that you brought up to share with other regional guests at this symposium?
Sure. What we found at the University of Pretoria is that we're quite good, I think, on theory. We know the theory, we understand the theory, we've studied the theory. But we have the frustration about there's all this research, there's all this knowledge about women's oppression, gender inequalities, the vulnerability of men, masculinities, but it seems to be making very little impact on the ground. And so this is a program which attempts to merge theory and practice. So how does the theory that we have start to influence the practice of NGOs and CBOs and other groups who are really working in very difficult circumstances? But equally importantly is how does their practice inform our theory? So it's not that we would go out and research other people or research communities, but we would ask communities to say what are the key issues that you're finding very difficult and how does that inform how we understand theory and change theory. And why I think that's important is that most of the theory we use tends to come from the north. It comes from northern countries, it comes from western countries, and I think it's very important that we start really strengthening theory from the south. That the north talks about us, they research us, and I think it's time that we talk about ourselves, we understand ourselves, and we explain to the world who we actually are.
We want to find out from Irish Aid point of view, why are issues of gender norms transformation important to you to the extent that you've been supporting SAFAIDS to implement the work with partners in the different countries?
Thank you so very much. For Ireland, gender equality issues are very important because we have a 5-year strategy that covers South Africa, Zimbabwe, and the region, and whose cornerstone is addressing issues around inequality. So definitely then gender-based violence or gender norm transformations is an important aspect of it, because for us gender equality issues are a human rights issue. So that's why they're very important for us, and they are part of the foreign policy for the government of Ireland. And for example, gender-based violence is one of the manifestations of the gender inequalities, and it is also something that works against the efforts that we're putting in to address issues of poverty. They are closely linked, so that's why they're very important to us, and we invest so much into them, and we want to continue doing so for the next number of years until 2021, which is where our 5-year strategy ends.
Chimboudza Zimbabwe, zvawaitiudza iwewe neupenyu hwako kuti program iyi yakakubatsira sei, iri kukubatsira sei kunyanya kuti uinfluence vamwe vechechi yenyu?
Right, chekutanga ndope kutenda nemukana uno kunge ndichishayawo nevamwe vese vedzimwe nyika, even nemuno wemuZimbabwe. Ini ndinoitwa Judah Chiruka, ndinobva kwamafararikwa kunova kubocha Mutare district, and tese tinozviziva kuti Marange is dominated by the Joan Marange Apostolic Church. Dominated by the church, and sometimes back, a long time back, it was a patriarchal society. But ndinofara nekutenda kuti ndiyo society iri kupinde kuchinje kudarika ma-societies ese in terms of patriarchy. Chekutanga ndode kutenda dambudziko rinoitika vamweni havakwanisi kukasika kuzvinzwisisa the doctrine of the church. The doctrine of the church is flexible, but we have got some culprits within the church who tend to misinterpret the doctrine. And zvozobuda kune vamwe zvinoita sekuti the doctrine is very strict and is oppressive, but this is not the truth. Chekutanga tine issue yekuchikoro, tine vamwe ma-culprits within the church, especially vanenge vari in the executive board, some of the church elders, kubvira kuna vana sekuru vedu isusu, most of our parents, even vana baba vangu, mukana wekuendawo kuchikoro sezvo tiri kuita izvi, umwe wacho wakaushaya, but isusu now taakumudini takumona. But chinosurprise kuti uye chinoita kuti vanhu vagutsikane the doctrine itself is not oppressive. Tine example yemutungamiriri wedu Baba Noah Taguta, iwo pachavo he is old and vatori nevana vatokura kuti vana vacho some of his children now over 50 and he is a businessman as well. Vanoita engage in agriculture and tese tinozoti even last month ndokwakune national field day kuchipinge purazi ravo under command agriculture. He is one of the best farmers in Zimbabwe, but tichitarisa business ravo even takutarisa in terms of mashops, supermarkets, filling stations, he is one of the successful businessmen in Mutare. Asi tinoona kuti mumabusiness avo vese havasati vamboemploya even manager or director or auditor from outside. Vese vanhu vari kuita carry out those operations vana vavo
Vane ma-qualifications.
and vane ma-qualifications. Some of them they've got master's degrees vana vavo and they were learning during the time of our fathers. But vedu isusu vakaita misinterpret the doctrine vakaona sekuti kudzidza is something evil, but this is not the truth. This is not the truth at all. Because ivo pachavo mutungamiriri wechurch vanenge vachitodzidzisa and by now tikatarisa he also managed to establish 5 big schools in our province. One of these 2 schools dzacho dziri padhuze nepadhuze onengoti primary and secondary in the same rural. I think it was officially opened. The primary was officially opened in 2012 and the secondary was officially opened in 2013 by our former president, Comrade Mugabe. And mukatarisaka tichitarisa kuzvikoro zvese zviri Manicaland, it is one of the beautiful schools in Manicaland. It is now the center of attraction throughout the province. So zviri kuratidza kuti ivo pachavo vanotobakidzawo zvirongwa zvebudiriro yenyika, budiriro yenharaunda zvakaita sezvirongwa zvedzidzo, because vari kutoshanda hand in hand with the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education vachibatsiridza kubudikidza nekuestablishawo some schools. In the agricultural sector vari kutoshandawo nehurumende kurwisa dambudziko renzara vachiita undergo command agriculture, wheat and maize production. So tinoona kuti vari kude kuchiratidza vaya vanongafunga vasati vasvika kwamarange kwacho vachinonzwa kuti kwamarange kunonzwai. Yes, at times is the truth, but tinoona kuti most of zvinhu zvacho zvinotaura these are myths. As well tichitarisa iwo some of the church elders vanga varipo, to be honest, even this Easter most of them they were fired from the church because of corruption, because they act as middlemen between the public and the priest, between the priest and the public and other stakeholders within the church. So they tend to lie to the public saying the priest have said this, to the government saying the priest have said this, to the priest saying the public has said this. So you could find kuti pakati kana pakaita mamiddlemen asingakwanisa kutaura chokwadi. Yes, at times tiona varivo vari kuita convert or trying to shape the doctrine for their own benefits.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Judah. He's one of the success stories that SAFE is working with DOMCAP at community level. They've gone into the Marange community, kushanda navo kuyedza kugadzirisa. Ivo vanga vari kutaurwa vanga vachinzi naJudah ndo vanenge vari maculprits ivavo, kuyedza kuti tichingoshanda pamwe chete tizive kuti mwanasikana nemwanakomana vakangoenderana. Join us after the break. Welcome back to our third and final segment, where we're looking at a regional symposium that was held in Harare by SAFEIDS, which was looking at issues of gender norms transformation, how they're contributing to ending gender-based violence, contributing to ending HIV, preventing new HIV infections. All in all, what we want to contribute is to the 2030 agenda of ending AIDS by 2030. One of the key speakers on that during that symposium is Prof. Mzi from Wits University, that's from South Africa. Prof, welcome to Positive Talk.
Thank you so much.
Could you share with us some of the key issues that you unpacked for delegates when we are looking at issues of gender equality, gender equity, challenges that women face? Could be even personal challenges that you as an individual, yes, you're a prof, but back to basics, you are a woman.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. During the Learning and Sharing Conference, one of the things that I shared was the importance of undertaking gender transformative research. And by gender transformative research, I spoke about the need for us to do research that moves beyond talking about what is the difference between men and women. We know what is the difference between men and women. We've answered that research question. We now need to magnify the glass and look at some of the most important, pertinent and taken for granted ways in which men and women differ. For example, I spoke about the importance at looking at intersectionalities between race, between class, between education, age, and gender. So when we talk about women and we do research on women, we always need to be mindful that women are raised bodies, women are classed bodies, women are women of different ages, women are women of different sexual orientations and gender identities, women are women who are from rural or urban backgrounds, and all of these are important when we need to understand women and when we do research. And more often than not, we forget to look at how all of these act out and intersect in determining women's outcomes. So that's very important. And I gave an example at the symposium, which I'm happy to give now, about how these work out in South Africa. And I'm sure this is true also for the Zimbabwe community of young women. Young women who are at university are young women who are in the ages, when they come to first year, they could probably be in the ages of 19. By the time they finish first year, they are 23, 24. And I work a lot with postgraduate students. And one of the things that I emphasized at the conference is to magnify the glass to the lives of postgraduate students. And the postgraduate students that we work with are sexual beings, they have reproductive lives, and some of them get pregnant. And we work in contexts that do not have pregnancy policy for our students. So in the absence of a pregnancy policy, as lecturers, we then have to make decisions about what we do with a student who is pregnant. And what is important at a university setting currently is what we call throughput. And it's very important because a degree that is meant to take 2 years should take 2 years. Now, for postgraduate young women who fall pregnant, that degree may take longer than 2 years. But for a postgraduate man who is pregnant, that degree will still take 2 years. Why? Because I used the example at the Learning and Sharing Symposium, that's because pregnancy is not a notifiable disease or condition for men. So a man will be pregnant, go around campus, continue to submit all their assignments, defend their proposals, collect the data, analyze, and publish. However, what we see is that women get interrupted in the process because of the pregnancy. A few things may happen to a young postgraduate woman who is pregnant. When they are pregnant, they may have an abortion. When they are pregnant, they may have a miscarriage. When they are pregnant, they may have a stillborn. When they are pregnant, they could give birth to a live baby. And all of these are conditions that might affect the postgraduate student. And what we see in higher education is that these students could take 3 or 4 years longer. Now, in the process, they may lose on some benefits. We do have the real life experiences of women who lose internship sites. The internship site would terminate the young postgraduate student because they fell pregnant, which we feel that is in fact unfair, because for a man who is in an equal position, but because we do not know about their pregnancy, it doesn't show, and it does not necessarily require that they take a maternity leave or a parental leave, then they will continue. We again have seen how this has penalized women, and we call it the motherhood penalty. So the woman would be penalized and they will lose on a scholarship, for example, because if the scholarship was given for 2 years and the person became pregnant and they need to come back and register for the 3rd year, they now need to raise money for the 3rd year, and yet males are not subjected to the same. So it's the motherhood penalty that women face. I spoke about that a lot at the conference, and I feel we need to magnify the glass and better understand how, as institutions of higher learning, we can support women and women's reproductive rights by looking at pregnancy. And one of your questions, which is an interesting question, is for me to also reflect on how this impacts on people like me at a personal level.
Yes.
So I'll stick with the same example. For example, if I supervise students, and that's very important in higher education, by the way, it makes you a professor. So if you supervise students, throughput is important. And if they graduate on time, then that is a good key performance indicator for you. If they do not graduate on time, then that is a negative performance on your side if your students don't graduate on time.
Okay, well, challenging, thought-provoking issues that Prof raised, and I assure you at the symposium there were topical issues. Thank you so much, Prof Mzi, for being with us on Positive Talk and unpacking the lived realities that women, the girl child, face, particularly at tertiary institutions. Until we meet again next week, goodbye.